Hey everybody, I'm Pastor David. I'm the kids pastor here at Church of Hope, and I wanted to talk to you about technology, and specifically technology with kids. That's a passion of mine, and in this world, in this new digital age that we live in, we have a lot of questions because if you're like me, you didn't grow up with technology. I remember the first time my parents brought a computer home. I was 8 years old and I was so excited for all the incredible things that this could do. It only ran DOS shell and I could play Clue on it, but I was still excited that we had it there. But today's world, our kids have so many more things to deal with and so many more technological options for them to handle and for them to choose from. And it can be daunting and scary for parents because they don't know where to go. And so a lot of parents, what they have to do is they have to choose. What are they going to, they have to choose one of three paths. And the first path is they never let their kids ever have anything to do with technology. I heard of a church that was wondering what to do because their parents have decided that their kids will have zero screen time ever, and they use video exclusively in their children's ministry, and they didn't know exactly what to do. So there's some parents like that, they never let their kids ever have technology. But then there's other parents who say, whatever you want is whatever you get. Their kids have all the latest handheld devices, they have phones, they have social media far before they're able or ready to deal with all of those issues that comes along, and that's not necessarily the best way either. And so what I'm going to talk to you today about is the third way, the middle of the road way, where we move forward with technology. We're not afraid of it, but we go slowly, and we use wisdom, and we make wise decisions on how we're going to move forward. What brought this about is recently I was having a conversation with a mom. Her daughter's in my children's ministry, but she has a middle school daughter. A middle school daughter was asking her for a phone. I'm sure all of her friends also had a phone, and this is, if you have middle schoolers, this is a constant battle. When do I buy a phone for my kid? Should they get on their phones? Once they get on their phones, what can they do on their phones? Should they have texting? Should they have Facebook? Should they have Snapchat? Instagram? What should they do? These are all questions that we have. And a lot of times, I remember when cell phones first came out, we were so excited that they were there. When we buy our kids our phones, we do it with the most noble of reasons. We ask ourselves, we say, I want to keep track of my kid. We have that Find My Phone feature, and I can always look up and see, hey, if they're at some friend's house or they're actually at school when they claim to be at school, or we say that we want them to keep in touch with them. We want to make sure that I can call them or text them, or they can call and text me and tell them where they are or what they're doing. And those are noble reasons, all for the sake of safety. But sometimes giving a kid a phone can enter them into more danger than you would even think about. Because if you think about it, in our day, when we would go out and ride our bikes or go visit to a friend's house, our parents would say, hey, you got to come home when the street lights are on. And that's great. But and there were dangers that came with there, and we hear all the negative stories that happen. But then we run into the problem now of we want to keep our kids safe from that, so we give them phones. But then just on that phone, that is a portal to a whole world of hurt that can come their way. The latest studies show that teens these days have more anxiety than a mental patient did in the 1950s. And teens themselves cite the reasons for the anxiety and the stress they feel is because of social media. They can't separate the difference between the digital and the real world. For them, it's just one place. And they're constantly comparing themselves with other people. Now, your teen may be the exception, and that may be true, but just in general, that's the way they feel. Kids have a sense of anxiety, and they don't know what to do with it because they're not ready for what is happening to them. Middle schoolers are the worst when they get technology because in middle school, that's when most kids are hitting puberty. And so they're experiencing physical, emotional, physiological differences and changes in their lives. This is when most of the time when bullying happens, when kids compare themselves to each other, when how you dress and the way you look and how you do in school matters to everyone. And when you give a preteen, a 12, 13, 14-year-old kid, you give them a cell phone, you let them be on social media, all of a sudden, you're giving them a scoreboard. Every picture they take has likes, comments, and shares on it. It has this many streaks because of Snapchat, or it has this many likes and comments because of Instagram. And so kids are actually curating their Instagram photos, Instagram things, so they can always be the best photos. And if it's not good, they'll take it down. You can imagine how that would wreak havoc on a middle school psyche of always having to be on, never being able to be themselves. This is the reason why privacy laws and even a lot of social media sites, they say you can't even get on until 14, but yet I still find, I get friend requests from kids who are in my own ministry, and it's like, you're 9 years old, but they lied about their age. And I don't know what kind of example that sets or what even world they're setting themselves up for. I usually deny those friend requests because I don't want to be friends with them. They're too young. They don't need to know everything that's going on. And so what we have to do is we have to say, is this the right thing to do? The difference is that when adults use technology, we ask ourselves the question, what will this technology do for me? Recently, I was helping my mom pick out a computer, and we talked about what she plans on doing with it and how she plans on using it now and in the future. And then after we talked about that, I looked at a couple options and I showed her a couple of computers. And then based off the specifications, the specs of the computer, I said, okay, this is the computer that you need. And she's completely happy with it, and that was the right decision. But for kids, they ask a different question. Adults ask, what can this technology do for me? Kids ask the question, what can this do? It doesn't seem that different, but it's a major difference for how you actually use the technology. Because when kids receive a new piece of technology, the first thing they do is they start pressing and typing and hitting every single button, messing with every single setting. They are explorers. They want to find out, what can this thing do? This is why a lot of times where you hear people say, my grandkids know more about my phone than I do. Well, it's because they get in there and they test with it. Recently, I introduced my 4-year-old son to Mario Kart Wii. I showed him a quick tutorial. Here's how you race. Here's how you pick a character. And then after he kind of got it, I left him to it so that he could play and enjoy that game. Within a few days, I came back in, and not only had he started to unlock characters that I never showed him he could unlock, he had set up his own profile under his own name with his own me. I never showed him how to do that, but he asked the question, what can this do? And he started clicking around and discovered, here's how I can get off my dad's profile and put my own profile. It's no different with kids. Every kid asks the question, what can this technology do? And so what we have to do as parents is we have to ask ourselves the same question. We have to become explorers yet again and say, instead of just asking, what can this technology do for me? This new cell phone, this can help me keep in track with my kids. This can help me know where they are and text them. But that's what it can do for you. But what can it do? What can that phone do? What can that piece of technology do for you? Now, I'm not saying that you should never buy a phone for a kid or even a 14-year-old. I think it's valuable, and I think in this technologically driven world, it's important that kids do have technology and understand how to use it. We just have to go slowly, intentionally, and ask ourselves the question, is this the right thing for my kid at the right time? A couple resources I have for you to help you further this conversation and understand what you do. First is this book called Parent Chat by Matt McKee. It's a quick little short book. It's less than 100 pages, and it gives you all the information how to have conversations with your kids about technology. It's written a few years ago, so it's slightly dated, but it's definitely useful for having those conversations with your kids and with your spouse or with the other parents in your family. Should I bring this in? Another resource, I don't have the book with me, is The Tech-Wise Family by Andy Crouch. That goes deeper into the science and what the studies and psychologists are finding out what's happening with kids and actual practical steps of what you can do with the technology in your home. Now, this next resource I will actually have in the Energize lobby that's specifically for parents. This is the elementary one, and it's the Technology Parent Conversation Guide. And this is just a quick little 2-page guide of here's how to have a conversation with your kid at this particular stage in their life about technology. What are you going to do? How do you bring this technology in? What are the words you need to talk about? How do you say these things? And then based off the same ideas, I also have a cell phone agreement that's for kids and that's for preteens. It's for kids and for adults. Because if we want to go in there, we have to set expectations. This is what I want you to do. This is what I don't want you to do. And if we say that up front and you hold them to it, you're going to be far more successful and keep your kids safe from the outside world and from the digital world. I love to talk about technology, and if you want to have more questions or want more information, I'd love to share it with you, and I hope this information helped you out. Be sure to subscribe and ask any questions you have in the comments. We'll talk to you soon.